Hey guys, it's Zach back with another review, this time a showdown between the MCHOSE A7RE and the Ajazz AJ179 V2 Titan. These are two of the best GPX Dex clones that I have tried. I'm going to talk about both of these as well as the Aula SC900 and give the crown to what I think is the best GPX Dex clone. But is the winner metallic red, bright orange, or hot pink? And do I think the Dex is even a good shape for you? Let's find out. So here we have them, both the AJ179 V2 Titan and the MCHOSE A7RE, or RE. I'm going to call it the RE throughout this video. Both GPX Dex clones, because we all want a good mouse without spending that full price tag. I'll also give a mention in comparison to the Aula SC900, which I reviewed before. So when it comes down to these two mice, the 179 V2 Titan, which is a terrible name as we all know, is a successor to the original AJ179 V2, and they did step up the quality in quite a few spots we'll talk about here. Meanwhile, the A7RE, named due to the fact that their main normal GPX clone is the A7. I'm sticking with the thought that the RE is the Ergo. There's not much to show for the spec page. Both of these claim 56 grams for the weight. We'll see if that's true later on. They both have a 3950. Oddly enough, for being the Titan, which is the top of the line version, this does not have 8K polling, which isn't a huge deal, but is an odd exclusion from the mouse, I'll admit. The RE only comes in pink and white, whereas the V2 Titan comes in orange, pink, and black. And without further ado, and hiding my new ROM ER21 here in the background, let's check out the implementation of both of these mice. We will start with the A7RE. This has the Armron 100M mechanicals for the main clicks, and this is actually the best implementation I've felt of these switches. It's actually shockingly light and spammable. I recently tried a clicks per second test, and I scored the highest of any mouse I was testing, which was 4 or 5 on this mouse with these Armron 100Ms. Typically when I see these mechanicals, I'm disappointed it's not an optical, but in practice, I came to not mind the fact that these are mechanicals pretty quickly, which is high praise for MCHOSE's implementation here. You can find some post travel if you're looking for it, but it did not affect the spammability of the switches for me. And for what it's worth, there is some side play if you're looking for it, but nothing I felt in game, nothing overly egregious here. Although from a QC standpoint, you do sort of wish this was a little bit tighter. It's not something that bothered me. Outside of the Incat Huano collabs and Blue Shell Pink Dots, this is probably one of the better mechanical implementations I felt on the lighter side. Obviously something like Vaxi is the heavier side, but these are very spammable and very enjoyable. For the Ajazz, we have transparent green shell white dots. What I'll say about these in comparison is they are like a sharper, more mechanical feel, and they are more medium in actuation, where these are sort of the medium light side. They feel fine, but if you're looking for the lightest, most spammable clicks, these are not quite that. Side play is honestly just a little bit less than on the MCHOSE mouse, and there's actually a little bit less post travel too. But between these two mice, I will say my preference comes down to the 100Ms in the MCHOSE. For what it's worth, the SC900 here has the TTC opticals. They are a little bit heavier even than the green shell white dots in the 179 V2, and I would say the least tight, my least favorite click implementation of these three mice. Coming to the side buttons on the mice, we'll start with the Ajazz first this time. You can see they are a glossy black, a good feel compared to bare uncoated plastic. They're very light to actuate, and if you hit the sweet spot, they're spammable. I would say the front one is more spammable than the rear one. The rear one does have some pre and post travel, as you can sink into the shell here, so it's not quite as snappy as like a perfect side button implementation would be. However, they are nice and rounded. They do protrude very nicely from the shell, and they're very easy to actuate. So overall, this is still a solid side button implementation, but as you'll see as a theme throughout the video, it's just better here on the A7RE. These are coated just like the mouse, the other good option you can have with side buttons. They also protrude very nicely, not quite as much as on the Ajazz, but a satisfactory amount. These, however, have less pre and post travel, so they're just snappier with better rebound, and they're easier to use consistently in game. As you can see, not much sinking into the shell there, and there's really a lack of sided side play here as well. A very, very good implementation of the side buttons here from MCHOSE, and a quick check, and just to check, not a ton of sided side play here either on the Ajazz. So again, both side buttons good, but the edge goes to the RE. There are some definite distinctions when it comes to the scroll wheels. As you can see here, the scroll wheel on the A7 is taller and just a bit larger in general. As far as the actual implementations go, the steps are very light. They're defined, but they're very light here on the Ajazz mouse, but it is louder if you're spamming it, whereas it's more of a medium, very defined step here for the scroll on the A7. The click on the Ajazz is much more spammable and lighter. It's a bit stiff here on the MCHOSE mouse, so definitely a weak spot. Probably the weakest spot on this mouse is just the more stiff click of the scroll wheel. So our first victory here for Ajazz. Coating wise, this is the part of Ajazz mice that just straight up stinks. They can't for some reason put a coating on most of their mouse. I don't detect really much of any coating at all on this. It's virtually bare plastic, that ping pong ball feel. I don't love that. It makes the mouse feel cheap. For the love of God, Ajazz, just put a coating on your mouse. Pay the factory a bit more, charge us a bit more. we're down with it. Anyway, rant over. Coming back to the A7RE, this is their standard coating from MCHOSE, rubberized, it's grippy, very good. I don't have any complaints. Clear win here, and yes, it's better than the GPX Dex's coating, but we're not surprised. We'll stop for build integrity before going to the bottom. You can get some side flex if you really press here. It's nothing you'll notice in game. No flex at all here on the bottom, as you do see there's a charging dock, and this serves entirely as the 1K dongle as well. Did not find any other flex to write home about here. As far as the MCHOSE mouse, I don't feel a lot of flex, but you can see the side buttons moving a bit there as you press on the side. Again, nothing that will matter in usage. For what it's worth, there's a slight creak here on the bottom. I'm not sure if you can pick that up. Again, not something in game, but that's kind of annoying if I'm being honest with you. Otherwise, no other issues as far as build integrity. Interesting that I've just now first discovered that during the review itself, and now it's gone. So, that's weird. Anyway, we'll jump to the bottoms here. This is also going to be a clear win for MCHOSE. We have a similar sensor position here, which is front of center, but I mean, like, look at the bottoms here. The size of the skates from MCHOSE is just much better. Even though this is a skinny back skate like a GPX, it is not split, which I prefer. For what it's worth, the skates on the Ajazz are not bad by any means. They are more well-rounded, as you can clearly see here, and the performance between these two sets of skates is similar as far as glide, but I just found myself feeling a little bit more at home with the larger pad skates. Of course, we wish there wasn't dongle storage here, so we had a big pad in the back, but you can't always get everything you wish for. So overall, both these mice get a strong pass on their skates. Surprisingly not bad for black PTFE. I realize now that I forgot to talk about the SC900 for most of that comparison, so I'll hit it real quick here. Like I said, the click's not quite as good as these other two mice. I do like the TTC opticals. They're a bit on the heavier side, and it feels like the total travel is a little bit longer, so they're not quite as snappy. The scroll wheel falls squarely in the middle of these other two mice as far as my overall impressions of it. I do have a full review of these out, but the stock skates on the bottom are just too slow. But the sensor position is very far forward on the SC900 compared to these other two mice, so do take note of that. It has similarly glossy side buttons to the 179 V2, but I had a weird issue where this just back one felt horrendous. It could sink deeply into the shell here. It was super loose. It was just a horrible experience. But for what it's worth, this also had the best build integrity of the bunch. And of course, that stupid removable battery that I found completely useless in my use case. So overall, which of these is the best Dex clone? You can probably answer this question before I tell you, but it's not the SC900. It comes down to the 179 V2, sadly for Aula, and the A7RE. The A7RE is the clear winner here. Every category beside the scroll wheel was a win for it. Now, I will say, just because this is the winner does not mean this is a bad mouse. I got this mouse for cheap right on AliExpress, and honestly, it's a massive improvement over the 179 V2 non-Titan edition. The skates feel better. The build integrity is solid. The side buttons are good. The clicks are pretty good. Honestly, every part of this mouse is surprisingly good for Ajazz. This is one of the better Ajazz mice I've ever tested. Performance is not like peak, as you'll see here in a bit, but totally fine. And just like the bare plastic ping pong. Come on, Ajazz. Come on. So yeah, all things considered, you've got the most money. You want your Dex clone, go ahead and grab the MCHOSE A7RE. As far as my thoughts on these mice versus the actual GPX Dex itself, I don't have a GPX Dex on hand, but I did test it for a bit before selling my copy, and here's what it comes down to. All of these are a better value than the GPX Dex due to the price. Pure implementation-wise, I would take the Dex over both the Ajazz and the Aula. The MCHOSE is straight up better. Now, if you remove coding from the equation, I honestly prefer a majority of the implementation of the 179 V2 to the Dex. Sensor performance is going to be better on the Dex. It has a coating, even though it's not the best, that is superior to this, and it does have a better scroll wheel in my opinion. The clicks will be personal preference, but honestly for the price, you could argue pretty strongly for this. And then the SC900, like, it was the best Dex clone at the time because it was pretty much the only Dex clone I had seen, but it's clearly been surpassed in a whole bunch of ways, and I just honestly, unless you want metallic red, wouldn't really recommend it at this point because the market for Dex clones has improved. Talking a bit about performance, I have a few mouse tester results here. This is the A7RE 1K. The performance is pretty solid at 1K. It's very consistent. A few blips out here, nothing really to worry about, but it is a stark contrast to the 179 V2 here on 1K. As far as top tier performance, this is not it. There are a large number of pulls that come in at 2-second intervals, which is what you would expect on a 500 hertz pulling rate, not 1000 hertz pulling rate. And these green lines indicate like strong, consistent like dips off of the standard 1-second update interval. This I wouldn't be as concerned about. And I'll say in use, I didn't really notice this. It did feel a little bit worse to me than the A7RE, but again, you're paying less money, you're getting a little bit less performance. It's Ajazz, it's what you come to expect. So do note these two things. And then lastly, just for shits and giggles, and for some reason I zoomed this out much more, this is the RE on 2K. Again, overall not the tightest dispersion, some concentrated pockets of pulls that weren't at a half millisecond, but nothing truly alarming here, and overall solid performance in my estimation, based on the charts I've seen over time. So you've now heard what I think is the best GPX Dex clone, but I also want to talk about just the shape of the GPX Dex in general, and do I like it? Would I recommend it? How does it work or not work for me? And the answer answer is it just feels a little bit awkward in hand. I can perform fine with it, but I think what it comes down to is this big dip here where the front right side is narrower. It just doesn't sit well with me. As you probably know from watching me by now, I do have a tilted grip here, so that may influence how this works for me. It might feel more natural to you if you're not a psychopath and just hold the mouse straight like this. But if you're comparing it to something like the ER21, which is a review I'll have coming out soon, this is much more of like the EC family of ergos, and it has more front right support here. It's like flatter, it's more defined in this area, as opposed to this jut in and sort of narrower front. I think it's most apparent from this angle, the difference here in the front right. That just feels better. It provides more support. Even where my pinky rests right here, it's just more comfortable for me. It's more of a slightly filling ergo. And I guess my PSA here is just that, like, don't assume because this is Logitech's ergo shape, it's the ergo shape for you. You can also see a strong difference in the click height here on something like the ER21, modeled after the EC as opposed to the Dex, and just a difference as well as tapering across the front of the mouse. So my personal preference is an EC shape, this RE, a really good mouse, the best Dex clone, not a mouse that I'm going to stick to going forward if I'm being honest. I'll probably stick to something like this or the Lamsley Paro, which is the EC3 clone or inspired shape. But if you're someone who knows or wants to try out the Dex shape and you want the best version without breaking the bank, this is your answer. Let's grab some weights. We'll start with the SC900, stupid battery in, 63.2 grams. The 179 V2 Titan edition, advertised at 56, coming in at 55.2 grams. Wow, Ajazz, surprising. And finally, the A7 REI Outdoor Edition, who cares? 56.3 grams. So between the 179 V2 and the RE, negligible difference in weight, doesn't really matter. And actually a little bit lighter than the GPX Dex itself. I also found no notable difference in shape between these two mice or the Dex, so I'm just gonna go ahead and skip the measurements. So that about sums it up for my thoughts on these GPX Dex clones. Much like the Viper V3 Pro and its clones, I am pushing the limits of actually enjoying talking about these mice, if I'm being honest with you. But thankfully the offering from MCHOSE was a very solid mouse all around and my clear winner. All three of these mice were perfectly serviceable, and should you decide to main an ergo, I wouldn't, and pick the Dex as your main shape. Not for me. These are all viable options, but unsurprisingly, as is almost always the case, MCHOSE comes in hot with the best clone. Please subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. You can follow me on X at Dasherzak, join up on my peripheral Discord server, check out the Mousecast podcast, and with that, we'll see you.